My name is Alissa Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. In the last episode of Voices for Justice, we discussed my father's bomb trial with an emphasis on the coverage the Phoenix Police Department felt most applicable to Alissa's case, specifically regarding my father's high propensity for violence and future violence. In this episode, we're stepping outside of the timeline of the case to hear from a very special guest, Alissa's biological father, Stephen Strahm. As I mentioned in the very beginning of this podcast, there may be one-off episodes as people come forward to talk, and that's exactly what happened. You might remember that when I referenced Alissa's biological father, I kept it quite brief, and that was on purpose. The truth is, growing up, I heard a lot of terrible stories about Steve. I was told that he abused my mother, my brother John, and Alissa. Some people even say that my mother met my father when she was attempting to escape Steve's abuse in a park. And since Steve was never a part of Alissa's life, I felt that he was mostly irrelevant to the story. And instead of trying to decipher fact from fiction without any court paperwork or case file to back up my conclusions, it felt irresponsible to go into any of the stories. But I've been talking to Steve for almost 2 years now. And in December of 2019, I received a call from him asking to be on the podcast. So I agreed, but under the condition that we would talk about it all. The rumors of abuse, him not being there, the adoption, everything. And he agreed. So a few weeks ago, Steve and his wife Karen happened to be in Phoenix, where I live. So I invited them to my home to record. What you're about to hear is a casual conversation, so you will hear us laugh, getting emotional, papers rustling, and Steve moving the microphone a bit. You will also hear Karen speaking from across the room in some instances. We spoke for close to an hour and a half, and we discuss a lot, so fair warning that this episode will be another two-parter. But without further ado, here is my interview with Alissa's biological father, Stephen Strahm. So today on Voices for Justice, I actually have Stephen Strahm, which is Alissa's biological father. Hi, Steve. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So I wanted to start with the story of I guess, how you met my mom. You know, how did all this transpire?
Yeah, I started thinking back about how I met her, and I realized that I was working in real estate in California, and she was a loan officer at a loan company, and I had a client who needed a loan, and so that's how I first met her. And we got to know each other, and then I asked her to go out, but I didn't ask her on a normal date because I knew she had a little boy who was 2, John. And so I said, Barbara, you want to take John and let's go to Disneyland. So we went to Disneyland on the first date, and I carried John around because sometimes he got tired and he was only 2. So I put him on my back and carried him all around. And that was our first date. And that's the first time we met. And that's how it went from there on.
That's so cute. I had no idea. I knew that John went to Disneyland a lot. Like, he definitely threw it in my face a lot growing up, that he had been to Disneyland like 5,000 times by the time he was 10 or whatever. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. John was just a good little boy. He didn't really, he had a biological father, and his father was there, but he wasn't much in his life.
Right.
And so, what he would do is sometimes he would get frustrated like little boys do when they don't have a father, and he would kind of take it out on his mom. But I kept him in check in that. And then pretty soon I became his dad. You know what I mean? He didn't know any different. And he thought I was his dad, and him and I spent all of our time together doing things together. He was the best little kid in the world. Best little kid.
Yeah. He's so cute.
He is.
Okay, so yeah, you meet my mom, and you meet John and everything, and it seems like you guys, hit it off right away. When did you move in, or what did that look like?
We didn't. What really happened was that your mom was working for that loan company, and her boyfriend, which is John's father, John,
right?
He had her Mustang taken away from her that he gave her. So he had somebody go over and at one of the shopping centers and hook it up and take it away. So she didn't have that anymore. So I told her, and I had a Corvette at the time, and I told her that she could use my Corvette to go to work, because I was working up in Malibu on a home that I was building. And So, the second thing happened is that she had nowhere for John to go. And I said, well, didn't you have Lucy there? And she said, and Lucy was an old friend. And she said, yeah, but I'd rather him stay with you if he can. So my father was helping me on the house to build. So along with my father and I, John was there all the time with us, playing and doing things and working on the house. And we cleaned up after the house, and we didn't leave it real ratty or nails or that kind of thing because we didn't want to step on them. But, so we had John there, and then Barbara, and she would stay at Lucy's house and then go to work and come on weekends and see us. And then eventually what she did was I had a large trailer up on the site. She eventually moved in the trailer with John and I and my father in the trailer.
Oh, sure.
And that's when it went. And then I remember her going and doing our laundry, my dad's laundry, my laundry, John's laundry, her own laundry on weekends. And eventually she just hated her job and she hated going back down there. And I just said, quit.
Yeah.
Quit. You know what I mean? So she quit, and she would go and do laundry on the weekends. And my dad said, you better marry this girl. She's unbelievable. She does your laundry and everything else. So eventually that was like maybe 6 months later or something, maybe more.
Okay.
The time I met her, I asked her to marry me. We went to Vegas, got married. We went to Utah and met my family, and my mother and my sisters and stuff. And, that's when it started.
Oh, wow. So what year did you get married? Do you remember? Sorry, I know it's been a very long time.
I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
I was 29.
Okay.
So
Alyssa's born in 84.
Yeah. So and it was about, so it had to have been at least 2 years. She was born in 84. So it had to be 82.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think I have some photos. Yeah. I have a photo right here in front of us that's dated for 82. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's pretty quick. So you meet my mom and like 6 months later, you guys are married.
Yeah. We're married.
Yeah.
And we finished building the building. And then I said, hey, my sister wants me to come to Phoenix, and she wants to start a business, and she wants me to run the business for her. And so she started a sign business. My sister and brother-in-law, they started a sign business. And I asked Barbara, you want to go? You want to do that? Is that what you want to do? And she said, yeah. So on the way out, we bought a whole set of furniture for the bedroom.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have any bedroom furniture. We bought that, and my dad followed us, and we drove to Phoenix. And my dad went a little ahead of time, and him and my sister got us a place to rent.
Oh, nice.
First. And so then that's, we moved there. We moved in, her and John and I, and, that's how we started our life there.
Oh, very cool. I actually never knew how my mom came to Phoenix. I had no idea.
That's how she got there.
Yeah. Interesting.
And she was, I didn't want to put her in that thing because I know people that live in California like to stay in California.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was kind of too, but I just had it with it, and it was a new beginning type thing. And she was like, yeah, let's go. So we went. That's how we did that.
Yeah, that's so exciting.
Yeah, it was good, I think, for the both of them. And John just turned into a fabulous kid, and he was just very loving and loved that we loved each other, and he was a part of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, at that point, did my mom have full custody over John, I'm assuming, if she's just able to leave the state with him?
John never took his father's last name.
Yeah. Yeah.
His name was John Farner. So she had custody from day one. She never put it in her real father's name.
Yeah.
So that she had custody. So she had no problem with that, of taking John.
Sure.
I did. And I'm going to tell you on a couple other things, and I'll say it right now, but I did try to promote Barbara to have John see his father, because I was in the belief that you don't ever take a child away from their parent, that you let them know their real parent and let them make their own decisions. So I tried to get him to go see his father and Barbara to do that, but Barbara didn't want to see his father and didn't push that very much. But she had an aunt. He had an aunt that John would visit, Dorothy.
Okay.
And John would be able to see her from time to time. But it kind of died out over time because Barbara did not promote it at all.
Sure. So there was no big fight when you guys were taking John to Arizona?
No.
No.
Never.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. In fact, she was like, she wanted to go and try to start a new life.
Sure.
And that's kind of how she got in the loan business when we got here.
Yeah.
That's because she was already in it.
That makes
so
sense.
She knew what was going on. Yep.
The next thing I guess would be like the story of Alissa being born. Was she planned? Was she an accident? Were you there? I want to know everything.
Oh no, she was planned. Absolutely. And, we were going through names before she was even born, and we went through a lot of names, and then finally I said, "How about Alissa?" And your mom said, "Yep, that's it."
Aw.
So that's how we got her name. We chose it together, and she was born, and we were very excited, both of us. I mean, we had a little boy, John, and
Right.
now we had a little girl. So our life was like, wow, picture perfect,
Yeah.
And John loved her to death, and he treated her like baby Sissy, and Sissy loved John because she looked up at him, and he grew into be a fine kid, amazing kid, listened to everything. He never got a spanking. I never spanked him. He didn't need a spanking. He would listen. He was almost overboard listening to it, unlike most kids.
Sure.
He was that way, but, I thought she was the most beautiful thing ever when she was born. I mean, Barbara and I we were smitten by her. She was so gorgeous when she was born. And
Yeah.
she was a pretty, pretty little girl, and she was easy to take care of too. I would say she had fire in her from the day that she was born.
Yeah.
Somewhat of fire in her. You know what I mean?
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. But she was really, really a special little girl, in our lives. And we just loved the heck out of her. And
Sure.
She was beautiful.
Yeah. I do have to ask a question. Something I was told growing up about the spelling of Alissa's name was that my dad told me that my mom didn't know how to spell Alissa. So that's why Alissa is spelled Alissa as opposed to the traditional spelling with a Y. Can you tell me anything about that?
No, we decided everyone had the Y.
Yeah.
So her and I decided that we wanted to put the I in instead.
Yeah.
That's all it was to it. Nothing.
That makes sense.
And that's what it was right from the beginning. And so that's what we did. We put it on the birth certificate, and
Yeah.
it was Alissa.
And where did Marie come from, her middle name?
I'm trying to think. Well, yeah.
I know it's like 35 years ago or whatever right
Yeah.
now.
I'm just trying to think. And it just sounded good. Alyssa Marie.
Sure.
I think that's what it was.
It's a super popular middle name.
And
Yeah.
it just sounded good. The funny part about it was that the wife that I married after Barbara, her middle name is Marie, and our daughter's middle name is Marie.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah.
That's too funny.
So the thing is that Alyssa would have fit right in because she would have been a Marie all the way around. So,
yeah. Oh,
so
goodness.
that's where that came from.
Yeah. Oh, that's always good to know. I always wondered because,
Yeah. And there's a lot of things you can ask me like that because that's important for other people to know, especially her own sister.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that like her middle name is super relevant to the story or whatever, but I want to know personally. And that's part of what this podcast
and
is
we
about.
want you
so,
to know that too.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you guys are together. You're married. You have Alissa. So unfortunately, you guys do eventually split. What did that look like?
Well, it wasn't ugly by any means at all. The way that we separated was, it was sometime in November before Christmas in December. I noticed that Barbara was moping around a little bit, and she got quiet, but she got more quiet.
Mm.
And so I said, Barbara, what's up? What's up with you? And she wasn't a communicator. She was quiet.
Yeah.
Your mother was. And she just wasn't much of a communicator. So I asked her what was wrong. And she said to me, just right out of the blue, I think that we need to be separated, and I'd like you to leave the house.
Wow.
And I said, what's going on? And she didn't want to tell me, and I didn't push it up from her. And so I moved out of the house at that point. And that was, I was there through Christmas. I remember Christmas, I was away, and it snowed that year.
In Phoenix.
Yeah, in Phoenix, which was unusual.
Big event. Yeah.
Yeah. So it snowed, but it wasn't much, and it went away real fast. But
Sure.
Anyway, that's how I remember it anyway, is that it snowed that time, and I was upset because I wasn't with them, and I didn't get to spend Christmas with them, and so on and so forth. And I thought, well, maybe there's a chance that she'll come around and it'll come back. But it wasn't long after that, she decided to move out of the house and move in with Mike.
Yeah.
And so I asked her, are you sure you're doing the right thing for the kids? And your mother said, he's a good guy. And at that point, I kind of got to the point where it wasn't about Barbara and I anymore. Oh, there were no words spoken, mean words from her or me or anything. I just knew she was quiet, and I thought maybe, well, there's a chance she would get me back because, she got quiet and she'd do that. So I thought maybe there was that chance, and I thought, well, maybe I can get her to go counseling. But anyway, she decided to move in with Mike. I packed all the stuff out of the whole house, not just few things that they needed or whatever, everything out of the house.
Yeah.
Put it in a U-Haul, took it over to Mike's house, dropped it off. It's the first time I met Mike, shook his hand. He took her and I left and went back home.
Yeah.
And that was that. I had no furniture, no beds, no nothing.
Wow.
So I just slept on the floor for a while until I got beds and a few other things. And, so that was the first thing that happened. And then I began to realize that I really, Barbara was already there, and her and I had a few words. She came over to the house one day, and I said, so really, really, just tell me the truth, what was going on. And she said she had an affair with Mike.
Yeah.
And that, she kind of told me she couldn't live with living with me with knowing that she had an affair.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that was true or not, or if it's just something she threw in there, but it didn't matter. At that point, after that, I got to the point where it was not about Barbara and me anymore. It was about the pain of my daughter and seeing John. And so anyway, she got alimony or whatever, not alimony, but,
child
support from me, not for John because I never adopted him,
right,
but for my daughter. And I think if I remember correctly, it was like $400 a month. And so, in the meantime, I was pretty distraught over my daughter being gone and the whole happening. I started to not work anymore, and I just felt like I couldn't work anymore. I was sick. I went from like 184 down to 155 pounds.
Wow.
And, I just couldn't do it anymore. And they repossessed my house. I didn't have any money, no money at all. I gave up my business that I had. I had a sign business, and I finally decided to move to California, and I moved there, and a friend of mine had a business. And so I went to work for him in California, and I was there for a year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the meantime, just before that, part of the reason that I left was, I would go over to pick up Alissa on Wednesdays and the weekends. And I picked up Alissa, I think, for the first week on a Wednesday and a Saturday. And she was doing good, coming over and see me and hi, Daddy. And, we just spent time dinner, and we never talked about the situation because it didn't do any good to talk about it. She was in the middle of the other side, and I just tried to make it the best I could for her. But anyway, she would come over and see me. And then the second week, Barbara decided that she won't ask me, why don't you take John? And I said, no, I will take John. If you write something out that says that I can have John, to take, and in case something happens physically or he gets hurt or anything happens to him, that I can take him to the doctors, or that we can, that I don't, all of a sudden I'm not getting in trouble for taking him.
Yeah.
And they refused to do that. So it was on them at that point. And I wasn't about to take John, even though I loved John to death. And so what I did was, I went to get my daughters. I think that it was the next week or the weekend after, my daughter. And, they said she wasn't here. And I said, but I'm supposed to pick her up now, and I'm supposed to take her. And they said, she wasn't here. She's not here. And
where would she be? How old was she?
She was with Barbara somewhere. I don't know.
Okay.
So anyway, they said, well, we have she has custody, your mother did, and I had visitation rights.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the judge and saw a judge and asked him about it. And the judge said, she has custody. You only have visitation. She has a right to do whatever she wants at any time.
Yeah.
She could do it. So I kind of trying to figure out what was going on. So I went back the next week to talk to them about Alissa to see if I could get her that week. And they both approached me and said, we want to ask you a question. And I said, what? And they said, she's at our house now, and she's wetting the bed every night. And I said to them, well, that's funny because she comes to my house. She never wets the bed.
Yeah.
Well, when I told them that, they yanked everything away from me at that point. They decided that I was not going to see my daughter anymore. And I knew that it was a lost cause. I couldn't do anything about it. The courts wouldn't do anything about it at that point. And I waited. There was a while that I waited before I left, but I decided to go live my own life and let them live their own life. And I left, and I was still paying child support. And that's how it went as far as a separation was concerned.
Yeah. Just going back a second to the bedwetting, do you think that had anything to do with it? Were they, I don't know, jealous that she wasn't doing it at your house?
I think she was wetting the bed, but I think it's her separation from her father and being in a strange place.
Okay.
She was probably wetting the bed. I've heard that children go through that situation before. So he was trying to use it against me, but I was telling them, wait a minute, she's wetting the bed at your house, not my house.
Right.
And so, it was another stab in the back, so to speak. I shouldn't have looked at it that way, but I felt like it at that point. And I felt like I don't really want to give up, but I felt like I had no choices. I mean, I wasn't going to fight them. I wasn't going to have fights with them or, and do that because they just put me in jail because she has custody.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to do that.
Right.
At all.
So how old was Alissa the last time you saw her?
2.5 years old.
2.5. Okay. That's something that I'd always, I've been a little fuzzy on. So that's good to know.
No, she was what I call taken from me at 2.5. That was the last time I saw my daughter.
Yeah.
She was still 2.5 when she come in. Her and I would come over to my house. We'd go out to eat on a Wednesday, and then I bring her home. I bring her back to back to Barbara and Mike's house because Wednesday night, you have to work and you have to do all this. So I bring her back there. Then on the weekends, and it was usually every other weekend, I'd bring her over and she'd stay with me. We'd eat there and she'd sleep over and
pretty normal agreement.
She loved her daddy, and we just did stuff together. And I had friends that lived in the neighborhood, so they all knew her, and everybody knew her and knew me. And so the thing is we just were living our little life, and she was loving it. But so that's when the last time I saw her.
Yeah. Do you think had my mom been with a different man that this would have happened, or do you think it was mostly because of my father that she didn't allow you to see her?
I don't know that, but I think a lot of it had to do with his influence.
Okay.
But she didn't let John see his father either. So I don't know. I really don't know. And I don't know. Barbara didn't tell me all the particulars about John either, her John's father.
Yeah, John's father, John. I know it gets confusing. There's so many similar names. Yeah.
And so I didn't know the truth. And, you can speculate about that stuff, but I don't know what they were thinking at all.
Yeah.
I had no idea. All I could tell you was I was hurt. And then when I didn't have Alissa anymore, I decided to go on my way.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the court issues and things like that, I do want to talk about the incident of the car in the front yard, which is highly debated.
Yep.
Because it's something I've heard growing up, right? There's a picture of my mom that is in my photo album. I don't have it here, but where she's standing on the lawn. She has like a cigarette or whatever, and she's pointing her finger down where you supposedly tried to run my father over with a car. So I want to hear it from your point of view because like I said, I've heard it all growing up.
This was the one and only incident that I had with Michael.
Yeah.
And this was a not getting to see my daughter incident. And I was parked in his driveway. I reversed it into his driveway and was parked in there. And I don't know if I was on the grass or not. I don't know. I don't remember what it was, but, I wished I would have been turned around the other way.
Sure.
No, not really.
I'm like, I don't blame you at all. Whatever.
No, what happened was I was sitting in the thing, and him and I were having words, and I said, "Where's Alissa?" And he said, "Oh, she's with Barbara." And so why isn't she here? And he made excuses up. And I said, "You know what? I want to confront you. You were cheating with my wife, and I want you to." He yelled at me. He said, "No, I wasn't. I never cheated on your wife. You were long separated from her." I said, "What?"
Right.
And of course, I kept egging him on and saying things to him. I did.
Which is fair. Yeah. I don't blame you.
And I said things like that. And he kicked me through the window.
Yeah.
In the side of the face, and my ears started bleeding. And so I took off from there. Never backed up into him, and I took off and I went to the police station, and I told the fire station, and I told them, and they said, well, you need to go to the hospital because it looks like you're bleeding out of your ear. And I said, I don't think so. I think it's just a little cut inside my ear.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went home, not thinking anything about it. And then after that incident, that's when I finally decided to leave. That was it. Well, I didn't leave because of the incident. I wasn't even thinking of that.
Sure,
Because it was nothing that happened, right? So I left and went to California and got a job with a friend of mine. And then I was there for about a year. And then I realized that that's not where I wanted to be either.
Yeah.
So I moved to the Midwest, and I was working in Kansas and living in Missouri. And that's where it went from there. And that was the hardest thing I ever did in my life, was to leave Alissa.
Yeah.
Because she was my first child and my first baby girl. And so it was hard.
Yeah, I'm
Very,
sure.
very hard.
I guess that brings us to our next issue of the adoption, because my father did legally adopt Alissa and John. But I want to know what that looks like on your end.
Well, first of all, I said it before about adoption. Somebody mentioned the point, well, Michael said, why didn't you adopt him? You know what I mean? And I told you a little bit about that, on how I feel about adoption. I think there's a time to adopt the child, but I think if his father is alive and he's willing to see him, that you need to let them be together. That would not hurt my relationship with John.
Right.
You know what I mean? He'd still have a good relationship, but you needed to know his real father. But, Barbara and Mike didn't want that. And so, I was living in Missouri, and I got a call. I got a piece of mail at my work, because I worked in Kansas, and the mail said that I had to go see the judge, about, child support.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know what was in there or what it was, but I went and I got an attorney, because I thought to myself, I didn't know what it was, but I want to be able to see my daughter. So if I get an attorney, maybe there might be that chance. So I got an attorney, and he took me we went to to see the judge, and the judge said that he had a letter from Michael and from the state of Arizona that said that he wanted to have the child support increased from 400 to, I don't know what. They never told me what it was.
Sure.
But they wanted it increased. And so, said, well, and so I told the judge, I said, Judge, you realize that I've never saw my daughter, and they won't let me see my daughter, and they stopped me from seeing my daughter? And I told him the whole thing. And, no one was there to represent. Michael wasn't there, but there was a guy that just kind of represented Arizona for what they were doing. And he's a court appointed person. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So he was representing them. And so, anyway, what happens is the judge listened to the whole thing, and he listened to my attorney, and he listened to the whole deal. And then he said, he asked my attorney how much I made and how much money I made and what the whole deal was. And he finally said, okay, I've made my decision. And I was whatever he said, I was going to go with whatever he said, because, you can't fight that at all.
Right.
And so anyway, what happened was that he said, I am, decreasing the amount that he's paying child support from 400 to 200.
Yeah.
Because he said, you're only paying for one kid, right? And I said, that's right. So he decreased it for me, and he said, but I want to ask you a question. And I said, what's that? And he said, are you aware that he has adopted your daughter? And I said, no one ever told me. I didn't know anything about it. If he did it illegally without my signature.
Yeah.
And he said, well, he's adopted. And I just wanted to she's adopted, and I just want to let you know that. And I said, okay. So I went home, and were you involved at that point, or was that after that?
After that.
Yeah.
That's when you realized the judge told you cannot have any contact.
Yeah. The judge told me that I could not have any contact until she was 18.
Really?
Number one was because I was a biological father, but because she didn't know me since she was 2. They said she may never, you can't take it away from that other people, and the other can't go the other way, and just all of a sudden she's going to go right to you without even knowing you. So he said, because you didn't have any contact since she was 2.5, wasn't there? You can't do anything till she's 18. Yeah.
So, but you can't get legal custody of her until she's 18. They didn't say you couldn't speak to her.
No. You cannot have
any contact.
Anytime somebody adopts a child, you cannot have any contact. So I thought, how did he adopt him without my consent? Well, I found out because Mike was an ex-sheriff, that he got one of his buddies at the sheriff department to vouch for him that he couldn't find me, but he could find me for my child support.
Right.
And so he signed that he couldn't find me. And so that's how they ran it, a thing in the paper. You know what I mean? It says that they're looking for this person and because there's going to be an adoption. And so they were able to adopt my daughter without my consent. And I could never do anything from then on.
So they ran. Okay. I could see that happening, right? I could see them not being able to find you or, saying they couldn't find you and then it kind of just going through. What I don't understand is them saying, don't contact her, because I've worked with kids in foster care whose parents, were horrible to them, who beat them, who abused them, who, all these terrible things. And they still had contact with the kid.
No, but they weren't adopted.
But they were. They would be fully adopted by their new families and still contact their original parents. Like, I know that.
Yeah. I don't know what the particulars are, but I was told that I could not have any contact with her because she was adopted until she reaches the 8th or 18th birthday. And then I could contact her. And if she wanted to talk to me, that's fine.
Yeah.
But until then, I had no way of contact. But then I met Karen, and Karen and I decided that we would go.
And Karen's your new wife or your current wife.
Yes, my current wife. We decided that we would go talk to an attorney about it.
Yeah.
And we went and talked to the attorney about it. And the attorney said that it would probably cost more than $50,000 and that still the judge might decide that she could never go with you because you have not known her since she was 2.5.
Right.
So it went back to the same thing that was before. You know what I mean? I felt like I had no recourse. I felt like just like when I left them to go to California, I had nothing to say. Nobody would listen. Nobody cared. And I just went on with my life.
Yeah.
It
Sure.
wasn't easy. And I'm not saying that I was perfect in that situation. I probably wasn't, and I should have fought for her, but I didn't at the time.
Right. I mean, we all have regrets.
Yeah.
And that, and that's not what this is about. And it's something I specifically pointed out online because I asked people, like, what do you want me to ask Steve? And a lot of it circled around regrets. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that because obviously you are regretful. Anyone with a heart and a brain is going to be regretful in this situation. So I think everyone's well aware of that.
And even more regretful once I found out that she was gone and dead.
Right.
And so that made it even worse. So, but I've had to deal with that. And I have that burden to carry the rest of my life because of it. But I can live with that. I can. Because all I do is think about how much I loved her and how much time we would have spent together.
Right.
So
absolutely.
And what can I say after that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the plan was to reconnect with Alissa when she turned 18.
Mm-hmm.
So what did that look like for you in terms of finding out that she was missing and that you wouldn't be able to reconnect?
As far as me, myself?
Yeah.
Or the overall outlook?
Well, how did that happen? Like, when did you try to reach out? When did you find out?
Well, I think, and I don't know the year exactly, but I think it was like 2008. Yeah, 2000.
No, we actually found out she was missing. Yeah, she was missing.
Oh, yeah.
So 2001, she went missing.
2001, Karen did a lot of research to check up on Alissa all the time. And she would look in stuff to see if she moved or where she went so that when we got ready to contact her when she was 18, we could do that. And Karen just went online to look and she saw her missing Alissa poster.
Yeah.
That's how it started. And she came to me and said, do you know what? Alyssa's missing. Right?
Right.
This was like after 2001. And we were like, whoa, what's going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
Go
ahead.
And I don't want to sound like I was a stalker or anything.
No.
I wanted to make sure that we knew where she was. We didn't know if Mike and Barbara were going to move the family to California or keep in the state of Arizona. We just wanted to have a general idea where she might be.
Yeah.
So that when she did turn 18, we could reach out to her. So I just kind of randomly every once in a while, her birthday would trigger it or something, and I would say, oh yeah, I got to check and see if they've moved,
Yeah.
And so just try and keep track over the years that way. And then she turned 17 and I was like, wow, we only have one more year.
Yeah.
And I pulled up her name just by the name, and there was her poster.
Yeah.
And I was shocked.
Oh, I'm sure.
Burst into tears and showed Steve. And
Yeah. 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 So you were checking, and and granted, we moved a lot, so I don't blame you. We moved like 12 times before I was 12 or something.
Yeah. And also my daughters knew that they had an older sister.
Yeah.
And so they were looking forward to that when it came, because we talked about Alissa and
Sure.
they knew her name. And because her name was Alissa Marie, and Christina's name, my daughter's name, Christina Marie, and Karen's is Karen Marie. So, there was a connection there.
Yeah.
And so the girls were excited to get to do that, and see her. So that's part of the reason we did it too, is it was just family stuff. You know what I mean? Family thought process.
Of course. Yeah. So, you find out that she's missing. You see this poster. What is your first thought?
My first thought was Barbara and I, Freudian slip. Karen and I thought he did something, but
My father.
yes,
Mike Turney. Yeah.
Mike Turney did something, but we didn't know, and we didn't know enough on what was going on. So it was hard to just go nuts and try to find blame or try to find this or that. So we
Sure.
didn't know what's going on. So then we let it go to see what was happening with it, and if they found her, if they were going to find her or what. And
Yeah.
in 2008, the police contacted me by phone and asked me if I was Alissa's biological father.
Yeah.
And it was like amazing that somebody contacted me, because I'd never had anybody contact me ever before, and except for on the child support. And he told me that the police detective told me that Alissa's been missing, and she was missing since 2001, and that did I have